Standing by. Sound speed, camera speed, and go for it.
Fantastic. Welcome. The title we'll be interviewing today is Stuart. Stuart, thank you for having us.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay, let's jump right in. First chapter. Accept, visualize, declare, do. So Stuart is CEO of Triggerfish Animation Studios, right? The chapter on accept, Stuart. What kind of responsibility did you have to accept before starting Triggerfish Animation Studios?
I think the acceptance kind of grew. I don't think I necessarily had that full acceptance right in the beginning. I think the idea in the beginning was to create a company that could bring my stories to the world. And I think what I accepted over the years was a sense that we could maybe be more valuable and more powerful if we were bringing other people's stories to the world. So I think it was a process of acceptance to actually this is a more exciting vision.
I love that you mentioned that it was a process of acceptance, right? Because the process of acceptance also brings us to our next chapter, which is the visualize part. So when you visualize Triggerfish Animation Studios in your head, what did that look like?
I always had the vision to have artists working together to create something that they couldn't create on their own. Initially it was people painting pictures because that's all I could really think of, but eventually it grew into making films and then making animated films. So it was the idea that we are bigger than the sum of our parts if we work together, and that we can, if we could take all the kind of complicated business stuff out of life and just create a really, creative environment for artists to work in, that they would thrive and that the creative output would be something extraordinary. So from quite early on I worked at how could we do that? How could we create an environment and a platform that could bring artists into a space where they could just do their best work.
The way you explaining it sounds like the Avengers. So, so it's like when one can't do it alone, they get the team together, and that's exactly what it is here, right?
Yeah, well, animation specifically is very collaborative. Nobody can do much on their own, but when you get a whole bunch of people working together efficiently, then you can achieve something amazing.
Great. Our third chapter, the declare part. So that's always a funny part, but I'm going to have a listen to what you have to say. Who did you tell it to? Who did you say, we are going to build this, the biggest animation studio on the African continent?
I think the first time I really publicly started talking about the vision was just after we released our second feature film, and I was giving a talk at an event, and I basically spoke to the vision, which is that within the next, at that stage, 20 years, we wanted to create a movie that stood shoulder to shoulder with any of the studio movies of that year, meaning Disney and DreamWorks at the time, and that could actually beat them at the box office and also vie critically for the Oscar nomination and the big awards that the studios go after. So having announced that as a 20-year plan, it was something that we then worked to, how do we actually fulfill this? Because the press picked it up and it was quite widely published. But that was what was nice, was giving it a 20-year, the declaration was 20 years in the future. It was harder for them to mock and say, you can't do this is impossible.
It's quite realistic.
Because anybody can do anything in 20 years if you're focused on it. So, and from that moment we could reverse engineer the pathway to get there. Once we realized what do we need to do to produce this movie, the first thing was we need to produce probably about 10 other films that we can learn on, and it'll probably be the 10th one that we actually break through. We need the best writers, and they need to be well trained, so we started a program to find writers and to work with experienced writers, and we needed technical expertise, which we then started working on building our technical team, and networks, and we knew we needed to get a studio deal. We needed to find ways of getting the distribution up to the level where we could compete.
Mhm.
So, and all that has come to pass in the last 4 years. So we've actually, we might get there earlier than 20, but we're still keeping it as our 15-year goal now.
Okay, it certainly looks that way. The final, so the talking is the easy part, right? So I love that you said that you had to engineer now the ways and the parts and the milestones to get there. So the doing part, which is the final chapter. Explain to us briefly the milestones you had to reach to accomplish
Well,
goals.
it was the script. We realized that in order to compete internationally, we had to have an extraordinary script. That's the fundamental of any film. So we started building relationships with writers that had worked for the big companies like Pixar, and we started to put together competitions that could attract writers from all over the continent, workshops where we could actually build into those writers and try and identify those who have an aesthetic or a taste that is broadly accessible, that we can take their movies and that the whole world market would be able to enjoy them. As well as how do we build the teams in different ways, the technical teams, all the different layers. So it's knowing what the goal was, the measurable goal. It was easy to start putting in place. Okay, well, we need all those things to be in place in the next 15 years, and then in the next 10 years we can do this, and then in the next 5 years we can do this, until eventually we were saying, well, right now we can go out and find writers, and that was the first thing we did.
Yeah.
And we
Story Lab.
The Story Lab, yeah, was the result of that thinking, and then the technical side, we agreed to a set of films, a series of films that weren't commercially in our best interests, but were technically in our best interest, because we knew we would be able to develop pipelines, technical pipelines.
So it's good practice, like a
we could build a team that could learn and redo the same, and get better and better at doing one thing. So I keep saying to people, if you know what you're doing, then it's so much easier to reverse engineer a path to that place than to kind of just wait and react to what happens in the moment and see where it takes you.
That's great. That brings us to the end of our interview. In closing, I would just like to ask, accept, visualize, declare, do, those 4 stages, do you think that could be applied only to your career, or do you think people could apply it personally to their personal lives as well?
I think it's applicable across the board. I think generally you having a clear vision, accepting the responsibility in that basically you're in control of your life, and you're not just putting everything on it. That's saying everything is external and you have no internal control. So I think that's a first step to anybody kind of getting out of whatever external circumstances they find them in, and then declaring a vision. I'm cautious to say, we have success bias. We've been successful. We've been through processes. We can speak to how we did things, but it's not going to work the same way in every single case. And
of course.
And I think it's important for people to know that there is a big risk when you step out toward a vision. Sometimes visions don't happen, and sometimes you need to know when to pivot to something else. But I think if you have a clear vision that's achievable in 20, 30 years, and you keep focused towards that, whether it's personal or career or it's spiritual, I think those are things that you can put in place and work in every day. If you can just go 1 millimeter closer to that goal, you're going to cover ground and get there, or get as close to it as you can.
Great. That's it. Stuart, gratitude. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to more stories from Triggerfish Animation Studios.
Great, thanks for having me.
Great.